What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Not So Black and White podcast, the podcast where we talk about not so boring music technology, music, progressive jazz, electronic music, whatever I feel like talking about. I've heard some good music lately. And anything else I would like to talk about, because I'm sitting here, the microphone's on, why not? If it's entertaining to me, I'm going to talk about it. So, this is episode number 5, I believe. So, let's hope I didn't get that wrong. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the teenage engineering modular system, sadly, being delayed. We're going to talk about the Moog grandmother's surprising filter performance in a video I recently made where I compared it to my favorite, the Moog Sub 37. And lastly, we're going to talk about the return of Jexus. So before we get started, this was an interesting week here in California and Los Angeles. It has been raining. Today was the first day back to the rain. I'm recording this on Wednesday. The weather has been very strange here in Los Angeles, and I think it's been helping me to be more productive. Sometimes when you're not able to leave the house for the reason of it's freezing and it's wet, you get a lot more done. So for everybody out there, since I can relate this to music in some way, if you are feeling like you need to create more, possibly take one of those rainy days and instead of watching a movie, make some music because you're inside and you have to. That's what I would do. That's what I've been doing. It's raining today, so it's a good day for a podcast, I guess. So let's get into it. First and foremost, let's talk about the teenage engineering modular delay. So for those of you who do and do not know, I am a teenage engineering virgin. I've never touched a teenage engineering product in my entire existence on Earth. And because of this modular system sort of passed by without much interest for me, but NAMM 2016, there's a lot of things that come up and you see them. So I saw that there was going to be a new system from teenage engineering, and this is probably the first one where I was interested at all. And that's only because I thought that it was something that I could try because it was so new. Unfortunately, teenage engineering announced that the 170 from them, which is the modular system, and the 16 modular synth, which is the keyboard that kind of is its brother, they've both been delayed due to a manufacturing problem. So I know a lot of OP1 and OPZ fans out there probably were really looking forward to this. When I think about teenage engineering, I always think about Jeremy, my love, over on Red Means Recording. It's not actually my love, but I think I dedicate enough videos to him, and that's for a whole other reason. I'll probably make a video about that eventually, but mostly because it's really tough to do the YouTube game, and having someone like Jeremy in your corner makes it a lot better. All that said, the statement from Teenage Engineering was released about what happened. So let's quickly read it so that you can all know, just like I know. Teenage Engineering said some good news and some bad news. They said the bad news is that we have located a manufacturing problem with the keyboard module. Since this affects both the 170, which is the big modular, and the 16 modular synth and keyboard, they have to cancel all of the orders. Cancel. They didn't say delay there. They said cancel. But they said you'll all be getting a refund. So hooray. And you will get a 10% discount voucher if you would like to order something else in the store. And fast track it in the queue if you'd like to buy the 400 modular instead. So they said they're working as quick as they can to make this work, but we can't promise a new date for the 170 and the 16. Said, thank you for understanding. Kindly Teenage Engineering. So, I want to cite that this story was placed and posted by Synthopia, one of the best modular synth and everything music basically related, obviously mostly synths, website around, and I got my start there, so I like Synthopia a lot. Anyway, so what does this mean? I think that a lot of people don't really know, because this email was sent to those who pre-ordered it, and this was a pre-order. I think more than anything, let's talk about how I think this is going to affect some people who were probably in that pre-order queue list. What I find a lot of times when it comes to things being delayed, especially equipment for the, say, the creative crowd, right? A lot of times, I know I've done this before. When you hear of something, you get really excited and you pre-order it, because a lot of times what you think is going to happen is that when you get that piece, it's going to become the piece that changes everything. And I don't know exactly how the OPZ, OP1 bass was already, I guess you could call salivating over the new modular system, because Jeremy from Red Means Recording, he would never consider himself a modular person. He is a big OP1, OPZ person, but by no means would he consider himself a modular person. So I wonder how this would actually affect them, and if there were a ton of people who were thinking like this is going to be a huge part of maybe their live setup, or was going to be, something that was going to create tons of new music. I always find that it's interesting a lot of times when a new piece of equipment hasn't actually come out, people already have decided how they're going to use it without even really having hands-on time with it. But they just always imagine the best possible outcome from any sort of piece of equipment when they pre-order it, because you let your mind and you let, I guess, your want to create run away with you versus the practicality. So the OP1 and OPZ are fantastic pieces. This is such a departure that I wonder, really, what is the delay about? If you look in the comments section of that video, a lot of people have stated that they're concerned about the lack of new date for release. And I completely understand. That is very tough, especially when you pre-ordered something. When you think about spending your money on something that you expect and then it doesn't come, and then they don't even tell you like, hey, here's when we think it's going to come. They just say, we don't know. And obviously they probably didn't say it in that much of like a shrug way like I would. But when someone says they just don't know, that kind of can put a sour taste in your mouth. So we shall see what happens. I don't actually know where OP and Teenage Engineering's their manufacturing is done. So it could be any vast number of things that hit. But I will say that I'm happy that they did delay it instead of what could possibly have been a subpar product if they had wanted it just to be on time. I think that when companies want things to be done on time over wanting things to be done well, you run into those weird video game situation, right? Where it's like, it's broken, and then they're basically sending you a patch update to fix it. So let's hope that everybody who pre-ordered gets theirs soon. I don't know. It might be the first OP Teenage Engineering, whatever it is, piece that I get. I should at least try it, right? I mean, I haven't tried any of their other OP1 or OPZ, and I don't know why, or the Pocket operators. So I think maybe. Obviously, I won't be getting it for a long time because it's back ordered anyway. So I guess regardless of if I want to try it or not, I'm going to be waiting in the queue just like everybody else. So I guess we can only hope to see something come from it. But anyway, let's get into some false starts off the album I released via YouTube and YouTube Music. Be back. All right, so we're back. Next up, we're going to talk about how the Moog grandmother and the response of the video I made really actually surprised me. And it didn't surprise me because I was expecting it not to do extremely well. It surprised me because I think that the sonic character of the grandmother is so much different than I think people had initially imagined it would be. And I think that's a great thing. There's a difference. I remember when I actually played the Moog grandmother for the first time in the unboxing video, it really kind of, I played, so everyone knows, I have owned personally multiple Moogs from, I owned my first Moog was the Little Fatty, not the stage 2, but the original Little Fatty, which sounded wonderful, but sounded different than their new stuff. So the original Little Fatty I owned a Slim Fatty, I owned the Moog Minotaur, and of course the Sub 37, and now I own the Moog grandmother. So I'll put the Little Fatty and Slim in the same category because they were the same architecture. So I've owned 4 or 5 Moogs. I might be forgetting one Moog somewhere. I mean, let's count the Mother 32, but I'll count that. We're going to count that because I bought 2. I don't own them anymore. So I've owned 5 Moog synthesizers, and they all had a different signature. The Little Fatty, I believe, if I were going to say which had the best, to me, the best sounding oscillators, just raw, I think that the Moog Little Fatty's raw oscillators were better sounding than the Sub 37s. I think that the filter on the Little Fatty was creamier than the Sub 37. And I think that the linearity of the filter itself was better. The Sub 37 just has so many more things that I personally enjoy that have nothing to do with just the raw sound. The tuning stability, the ability to have the 2 mod matrices, in a sense they're matrices. I love the multi-mode filter per se, and basically different slopes, and the ability to have the overdrive and the sequencer. The Sub 37 is so good. All those things to me trumped what was in the Little Fatty, Slim Fatty Minotaur. The Minotaur had a great sounding raw oscillator, closer to the Little Fatty. The Moog grandmother is not like the Little Fatty. It's not like the Minotaur, and it's not like the Mother 32 to me versus, the subs. It's so different, and the uniqueness of the sound is very sweet. and I knew it right away when I played it. The filter is much sweeter. And when it comes to why the response to the filter was so surprising was that I would say at least 5 or 6 to 1, maybe more. Maybe I would say that 90% of people who did the blind, watched the blind test that I did of the Moog grandmother versus the Moog Sub 37. I would say that 90% of the people who watched and checked that video out picked the grandmother as the piece that they liked more. And it surprised me because I think that when I was actually doing the test, I knew that there was a difference in sound, but because I think my ear is biased to the Sub 37, I think I might have liked it during the test because I know how it sounds versus something that's new to me. I know exactly how the Sub 37 is going to be changed with the filter when I crank up the resonance, when you're using the multi-drive. I know how that's going to sound. I know what's going to craft into later, but I don't know what the Moog grandmother is going to craft into. I love how the Moog grandmother really lends itself to more lead-based patches using filter resonance or like polarity. I think it just in the top end, in the high mids, it filters better than the Sub 37 does. I think the Sub 37 for me has never been a lead piece. It's always been more of a bass and mid kind of a synth. And I don't know exactly why that is. It obviously has plenty of lead patches, but anytime I go to the lead patch, it just ends up that I don't use that for various reasons. So the most, I would say, impressive thing to me was the pure lead ability of the grandmother. And I'll definitely use that for leads in the future because it doesn't seem to lend itself as much to basses because you have so many other fantastic tools with the Sub 37. You've got not just the sub oscillator, but you can do the dual phonic mode. There's tons of other pieces that make a synth great. And obviously there is a difference in price, but the difference in performance, if we're talking you're just trying to get as far as you can, as much mileage out of a piece of equipment, I don't think the Moog grandmother really put you back that far. I would say that for 99% of people who are going to pick one synthesizer and price matters, I would pick the grandmother because I think that there's just a lot there for the money, especially when you think about the added spring reverb. That really can go a long way for a lot of people. So the thought that I had when doing the filter test and then also reading all the responses was that I hope that people were first listening on really good headphones, because on really decent headphones, I could absolutely tell the difference in the Sub 37s, especially the low bass and low mids, where it would be muddy, and also the grit overall. I really kept the filter, I kept the mixer at 12 o'clock so that things weren't getting overdriven by the way they were going to saturate the filter. I thought that that was probably the best way to go about it. And I definitely felt that the Sub 37 had a ton more harmonic content in the low, mid, the sub mid, the bass. But the grandmother was cleaner. So it's sort of a trade-off. I think that the actual difference would come in a much subtler way when you're mixing. But I think that we're talking like a source. I would say that I would say that the grandmother is like a certain setting on a Fender guitar, a certain pickup, and the sub, whichever one I said, is a different pickup. Yeah, you can make both. I mean, all are going to sound like a guitar on a Fender when you're switching the pickups, but it's the subtleness of what kind of sound you want out of it. Though the two sounds themselves are completely separate, and if you were, say, going to do some mixing later on, they would blend nicely while that each having their own signature character that would allow them to stand out. So I was surprised, but I'm really looking forward to using the grandmother as a lead piece because I think that in general, it just lends itself better to that than the sub for me. And I think I could probably get behind that when we're talking about how I actually feel about a piece of new equipment that I'm new with. So let's get to another piece here. This is Kid SOS from the album I released on YouTube Music and the YouTube Audio Library. That was Kid SOS. That's track number 2 off the 10-track album I released on YouTube Music and the YouTube Audio Library. So, check it out if you'd like. Anyway. So, lastly, we have to talk about the return of Jexus or whatever is going to be happening with that. So, for maybe a lot of you who are, it depends how many people actually listen to this, but for anyone probably listening, you've watched the 2-part mini documentary, which was The Great Synth Mysteries episode 2 and 3, The Story of Jexus. So, in The Story of Jexus, basically ends with me saying that I selfishly want more from Jexus. I want more music. I want more videos. I want more of what Jexus brought in terms of a very, very subjective approach to how he made his music and created his persona online. And yeah, when I said selfishly, it was selfish. I think that here's the thing. Making the documentary was so weird because when you make something that you didn't think you could make, you have to sit back and say, like, I actually did that now, and that's done, and I did it. So I didn't actually think that it was ever going to get done not for any other reason than that it was going to be hard. What made it better was that I actually got help from someone who was basically archived all the stuff that he had done over all these years. I got tons of stuff. It was incredible. And because it was so incredible getting all this stuff, it made it so much easier. While it was a labor of love, it was definitely hard. I obviously started on that a long time ago in May of 2018, and it didn't wrap until February 5th of 2019. February, March, April. I mean, wow, that's a long time. That's nice. It's so funny because, yeah, I talked to Jexus consistently during this whole creation, and I got feedback from him, and I did so many things that I thought he would like, and also did some things that I didn't know if he would like. And this is interesting. The story of Jexus is not really about a musician. It's really about a person and a person's how do you say, their experience trying to be, I guess trying to live a life that they imagine is happy. And that's just my interpretation of what actually happened, obviously. So Jexus hopefully will give something later in terms of a better explanation. Maybe he won't. Maybe he will. All that said, when I saw a post from Jexus in his community tab, which is crazy because when he left years ago, there was no community tab. And he said, you know, basically be patient. There's a video possibly coming. That's 8 years, basically. I mean, he's been gone for a very, very long time. I think it's, let's see, 2015. It's a long time. But in a way, what does that mean? He left and no one took his place, and that's good. But coming back, I don't know what that means, right? What does that mean? Does that mean that he's really back? Does that mean I can't imagine he'll do the same thing because the amount of work that took is insane. And I don't know if I would want that for someone after creating the story of Jexus. He ended up in a place that I see many creators going, which is to a place that you don't always want to be because you know that the stress, the anxiety, all those things to reach the success, are they worth it? I think that's the hard part. When I say I selfishly want more, that's the selfish part. Is that if I could do it without any of those repercussions, yeah, keep going forever, Jexus, and keep buying synths. But I don't know. Can the show go on? I don't know. I look forward to seeing what he does next because it's intriguing to me. But the mystery, I think, is still there. And I love that people love him because I've learned a lot about myself through Jexus. Anyways, that's it, guys. I thank you for joining me for this randomly whatever episode. So, we'll talk later. Thank you. Bye.